Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Future Focused Fridays. A special welcome to our guest speakers, registered guests, civil society organizations, permanent missions, and United Nations entities. I am Ambassador Rachel Guyamero, a delegate to the United States of America on the Future Focused Global Ambassadors Cohort. I am a junior at Charter School of Educational Excellence High School, the CEO of Chiefs by PYT, and a passionate advocate for youth development and empowerment. It's our honor to be a host on this season of Future Focused Fridays. And now I turn the time over to my co-host for the season, Mr. Dale Hernandez.
Thank you, Ambassador. Good evening to our viewing audience. I bring greetings to you from the management and staff at Future Focused Empowerment Institute International. I am Dale Hernandez, the Interim Chief Executive Officer at Future Focused Empowerment Institute International. We are a global social enterprise serving approximately 500 young men and women in over 55 countries across sub-Saharan Africa, Asia, North America, Latin America, and the Caribbean. We specialize in youth empowerment strategies, piloting and designing psycho-educational and life skill training programs as we focus on impacting the socio-economic outcomes of communities, nations, and the entire world, one youth at a time. Ambassador.
Thank you. Now let's talk about the brainchild of this group. Known as Future Focused Global Ambassadors Cohort, a group of 500 young global impact ambassadors attached to this program serve as country delegates for Future Focused Empowerment Institute International's most highly visible programs. As a delegate, each ambassador becomes the public face of the organization and is responsible for the initiation, planning, and execution of youth conferences, summits, and programs. Through this Global Ambassadors Program, members not only gain public exposure and access to United Nations and events, but are also afforded the ability to cultivate effective relationships with other country delegates and the organization's global network of social capital. Dale?
Thank you again, Ambassador. At this time, we extend our gratitude to those who have made this day possible through their commitment and support for the vision of the organization and their interest in global youth impact and development. So we'll take a short break and we'll be right back after this.
At this time, we wish to inform our viewing audience that you could post all questions in the Zoom chat box and in the comment section for those of you who are tuning in on our Facebook Live or YouTube channel. Devon?
Thank you, Ambassador. So now to introduce our guest speakers for this evening. And first we have Ambassador Empo. Empo Chosen Makafoni is a future-focused global ambassador to South Africa. And he's also the Assistant Vice President and the Future Focused Global Ambassadors Cohort Leadership Council, overseeing Sub-Saharan African region. He's a financial advisor, a national athlete, and social entrepreneur. Empo is the holder of a bachelor's degree in economics from Clemson University and an associate's degree in business administration and management general from Monroe College, both located in the United States of America. Ambassador Empo is also a national athlete in South Africa and has competed at the most elite Division I conference for track and field since arriving at Clemson, arguably the most elite Division I conference for track and field. In 2016, Ambassador Empo represented the Tigers on the national stage after qualifying for the 2016 NCAA East regional meet at Lexington, Kentucky, and was the second fastest runner on his team in the 800 meter at the 2016 ACC Indoor Championships. He's the CEO and founder of M&K Learning Projects and Young Minds and Infinity Innovations. Ambassador, welcome to Future Focus Fridays, and thank you for your dedication and commitment to the vision. I know it's almost 2 a.m. in South Africa, so the floor is now yours.
Hi, thank you for having me. Good evening to our listeners. I hope that you're going to enjoy the show and take a few lessons. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Next, we have Mr. Hanif Benjamin. Mr. Hanif Benjamin is a clinical therapist and clinical traumatologist. He earned the clinical master's in social work with distinction in New York City and a bachelor's of science in criminal justice with summa cum laude honors at Monroe College, New York, USA. He also holds certification in clinical traumatology from the Traumatology Institute of Canada and a certification in child trauma. Mr. Benjamin is currently a doctoral student, PhD social work at the University of the West Indies, and is a senior adjunct lecturer and tutor in the Department of Behavioral Sciences at Costa, University of Southern Caribbean, and UWI. Mr. Benjamin is a licensed Master of Social Work, licensed by the New York State Office of the Professions, and a member of the American Academy of Experts in Traumatic Stress and the National Center for Crisis Management. He's also the founder, president, and chief executive officer of the Center for Human Development Group of Companies Limited, TCHD. With skills in clinical services, human and educational service, and training and development, Mr. Benjamin is extensively engaged in fighting the stigma of mental health, child and youth advocacy. He also works with high-risk families that are more susceptible to negative societal influences, such as, but not limited to, traumatic situations of domestic violence, sexual abuse, drugs and substance abuse, and homicide. Mr. Benjamin, thank you for joining us on Future Focus Fridays. The floor is now yours.
Thank you so much, Gail, for having me all the way here in Trinidad and Tobago. It is indeed a pleasure to journey with you tonight. I'm excited for the conversation that will delineate here, and I'm hoping that all viewing and listening audience would be able to take away from it. Thank you.
You're welcome. And last but not least, Ambassador Clint Kalinda. Ambassador Clint Kalinda is a delegate to Guyana on the Future Focus Global Ambassadors cohort. He is a final year student of marriage and family studies who has a passion for working with youths and families who face a kaleidoscope of social and personal issues. He obtained several certifications in marriage and family studies, mental health awareness, and guidance counseling, which he aims to use and utilize in his career. A humanitarian by nature, Mr. Kalinda served as a committee member of the BYUI Child and Family Advocacy Society and as an advocate at the Family Crisis Center in Rexburg, Idaho, where he worked closely with various individuals from different demographics as he strived to implement, enlighten, and strengthen the family as the backbone of any society. Ambassador Kalinda, welcome back to Future Focus Friday. The floor is now yours.
Thank you for having me, and it's a pleasure to have the discussion with you.
Rachel.
Thank you. Now, before we begin our dialogue, we will take a short commercial break from one of our sponsors. At this time, we will transition to our dialogue, but first we wish to remind our viewing audience that you can post all questions in the Zoom chat box and in the comment section for those of you who are tuning in on our Facebook Live. Joining us live on Future Focus Fridays are three servant leaders and visionaries who are involved in social work and youth development. Dale?
As we close off Men's Health Month, our conversation today focuses on the relationships that men have and how they foster healthy relationships. The dynamics of relationships, whether it be romantic, family, friendship, or professional, can impact and add to the value of life. Relationship coach Randy Skelton states that healthy relationships should not feel like a job, but a source of pleasure, fun, and comfort. The reality is that each person has a different idea as to what constitutes a healthy relationship and how the relationship may be viewed in the eyes of society. There is no one perfect relationship, and the concept of healthy relationships can vary depending on the individual. Today, we hope to delve into this topic and focus on the varying perspectives to shed some light on the topic fostering healthy relationships. So, we're going to get straight into the conversation. And the first question, what do you define as a healthy relationship? And what does a healthy relationship look like to you? And I'll pose the question first to Mr. Benjamin.
Wow. So what does a healthy relationship looks like? I think that is a subjective
Yes.
question. So I will answer it from both a subjective and I'm going to try to put a little professional stint on it, at least what I advise my clients. One where both parties, both partners thrive, they're happy, and they feel as if they are respected and they're open with one another. I think to me that is the crux of a healthy relationship. If I don't think that I cannot be open and honest, if I don't feel as if I am loved, then it's not healthy. And I will say this one thing. If I have to work for the relationship to work, chances are it's not as healthy as it should be.
I agree. Thank you so much, Mr. Benjamin. What about you, Ambassador Kalinda?
All right, thank you. In the simplest form, a healthy relationship is where two persons make a commitment to better each other's life. Like what was mentioned, this is subjective. And so in a subjective form as well, I will think that a healthy relationship helps an individual to be autistic, feel supported, love, allowed to be themselves without fear of judgment or ridicule, feel comfortable, can openly express oneself and feeling. But let me say, just to not a disclaimer that was mentioned before, healthy relationship does not look the same for everyone since people have different needs. And like was said, one might work for one couple, might not work for another. Thanks.
Thank you, Ambassador. Ambassador Macafone.
Thank you. Without taking anything from what my colleagues have said, I think they've described what a healthy relationship is. But just to add on a little bit, I would also say that a healthy relationship is like your safe haven. You know when you go within that space that you are comfortable, you're not going to be judged, you're not going to be questioned. You just become free and then say whatever that you want to say and then be able to engage effectively with the next person.
All right, thank you so much. In terms of showing emotions, sometimes we are told as men that we shouldn't. And I'm talking about in whatever relationship it could possibly be in terms of expressing how we feel. Men are most oftentimes told not to do so. What do you think, or do you think that men should show their emotions in a relationship? Mr. Benjamin.
Okay, that question is to me?
Yes, first.
So definitely, let me tell you this. I think for too long, men has been emotionally illiterate. And not because we struggle to become literate. I think we have been placed in a man box from birth. We were told what a man should look like, and more likely than not, it is that you need to be rough, you need to be tough, you need not be a sissy, gay, or a girl. So if you fall, you should not cry, right? You should get up and you should dust yourself off and keep it moving. So we take pattern from the people in our lives. So the men in our lives also demonstrate this level of rough and tough. We see it the way they treat their mothers, they treat our wives. And so over time, we were inculcated that that is what a man should look like. And somewhere miraculously at the age of 18, we then want these boys who are now turning men to show emotion, to show something that they were never taught before. And that is one of the major problems we have in relationships, the lack of showing emotions. So you want a man to be empathetic, you want a man to be able to hug and to caress and to cuddle. And too often you hear men saying, "That's not my thing. I am not in that. I don't know about that. I never grew up so." You see, and even when it comes to intimacy, there is a lack of emotion even there that cause even further and further problems down the line. And so most definitely, we should be teaching our boys about emotion. We should get them to be emotionally literate. And more so, we need to be teaching our young men, our men, to develop a level of emotion that we society would have robbed them of along the way.
Thank you so much, Mr. Benjamin. And I agree with that. We need to teach our young men how to be emotionally literate. I love that. What about you, Ambassador Kalinda?
Oh, wow. I think Mr. Benjamin summed it up
Yes.
in the best perfect way that I could have summed it up. But in terms of, I think this is a tricky question, and so I'll try to answer it from two perspectives. I think the first perspective is that I do not believe that, I do believe that men can be emotional. Um, Whether this was taught either directly or indirectly in some form or fashion whilst they were growing up, either through their parents, through family members, through friends, through community or religious leader, there were some form of emotional traits that were exhibit and which they saw. Uh, like Mr. Benjamin mentioned, the problem is that most men were taught to display or to take on this macho role, and any weak or emotional traits were considered feminine or not man-like. So therefore, showing emotions or expressing how we feel or what was affecting us slowly became something what we men learn to deal with sometimes alone or by internalizing, especially when it came to the opposite sex. Unfortunately, it is completely the opposite when it comes to relationship because you need to show that emotion. You need to show that trait. So it's very difficult and it is a challenge for many men, or it's a barrier for many men to get over. The second perspective is that some men grew up in broken household where how to love, being vulnerable, showing emotions were not taught. Also, many others grew up in households where their fathers were not present. And as such, how to be a father or how to be emotional were many times taught by peers who also grew up without having a father in the home. And sadly, we have a lot of men, all we know is just our role is to provide and to be a protector. And in most cases, that is what constitutes a healthy relationship, or that's what we understand to be emotional. So thus being emotional available is sometimes very foreign to us, and sometimes we express it differently than others would expect. It's something that I believe can be broken. It's not impossible, but it just takes time and perseverance on both parties to work towards.
Thank you, Ambassador. Ambassador Microphone.
Wow, awesome. I think my colleagues have just, given their best sum to answer your question. However, I think just to add on a little bit as well, I think the misconception that men should not express their feelings should be thrown out of the window, because it has been around for far too long. And I live in a country where gender-based violence is so high, based on those reasons that men should not show emotion. A man in a relationship gets into a challenge, and then just because they were taught that you shouldn't show any emotion, and for you to show that you are powerful, you need to, victimize, like beat up the woman and stuff like that, which is very wrong. I mean, if from get-go issues can be addressed, men should be taught from a young age. I mean, even within our societies, I'm from South Africa. When I was in the USA, I found it very different that side. My friends who are Caribbean, they were more like here, like me here in Africa. Our attitude is the same. We hardly show any emotion. However, my counterparts that I met in the USA, they were more, showing emotions, and they wouldn't shy away from engaging when it came to, uncomfortable topics. So I would say, like, that misconception that men should hide their feelings should be thrown out of the window at this time moving forward. And we should teach our kids to engage, in conversations, and be able to open up about things that they're not good or feeling well about.
Thank you, Ambassador. Marisha.
Thank you. Relating back to Ambassador Clayton's contribution in the last question, are we asking men to be and do something they were never taught and never had examples of? Mr. Benjamin?
Thank you for that, Ambassador. I think we could answer that question twofold. I think that the time has come for us, yes, to ask men to become, to evolve, right? I think it is also important to recognize the foundation that they are working with, that we are working with, right? I think it is important, once we understand those two conundrums, how then do we come down the middle? Yes, we should tell our men, yes, we should encourage our men, but that comes with first understanding where we came from and understanding where we want to go, where society wants us to go, where we personally want to go. Because how does one move from what they were taught for 18 years of their life into a new paradigm? How does one move across that continuum from being machismo and understanding man to be rough and tough to one that is gentle and one who can express an emotion without feeling shame, guilt, or embarrassment, you see? And so, yes, we should ask our men to take it to the next level, but in so doing, all of us must be able to create a safe space where men can in fact express those emotions. We must create a society that is accepting of men who express such emotion, because our families depend on it, our children depend on it, society depends on it.
Thank you. And someone in our comments says, at a young age, young men aren't allowed to express emotions. They grow into being unstable in many ways: aggression, ignorance, abusive. So yes, it is important to have a safe space so we can evolve. I would like to ask this question to Ambassador Clint next.
All right, thank you. So again, Mr. Benjamin summed it up perfectly. Growing up, I learned there was a saying: you cannot teach an old dog new tricks, or you need to bend the tree while it's still young. A lot of men, like I said, a lot of men grew up in broken households. So being emotional was something not taught. Yes, we can't expect men to be emotional, but then we need to understand, like Mr. Benjamin said, we need to understand um, their background, what motivates them, and how we can work with them to get to that emotional state. Just saying that, hey, you need to be emotional is not enough. Helping them along the way. I have learned there's something called, love languages. And there's this color code test online that you can take that basically tells you what motivates you, what drives you, what brings you happiness, what brings you pain. And if we understand what motivates a man, then we could work around it in a sense to help him to meet that emotional state. Again, it is not something that's going to be a one-time fix. It's something that we need to continuously progress towards. But again, especially for men, if it's in a marriage, if it's in a relationship, both parties need to hand in hand work towards it.
Thank you for your contribution. This question also to Ambassador Empo.
Yeah, no, I think I'm kind of running out of ideas because my colleagues here, they keep, however, just to add on a little bit, indeed, like we emotions isn't something that is taught. It's difficult to teach someone how to act because you act on what you see daily and how you are brought up. So if you are brought up in that space where in an environment where maybe you see your dad abusing your mother or your friends are always fighting when someone is angry, the emotion that it's something that you learn firsthand because it's something that you are exposed to. However, now we've got technology and fortunately enough, if you get to travel around and you meet like different people, I think that also can kind of assist in you getting a different perspective, not something that you're always used to. So not like being in a shell, but allowing yourself to explode out of that shell and be able to see how other people respond and how other people deal with matters. I think that, will go a long way in helping our future generations in terms of like for them to do better moving forward.
Thank you. Before we change the topic, we have a question from one of our audience, and the question is, how does a man transition from a macho to emotional? How can you learn to do it? What are some actions that he can take to make this change? Ambassador Empo, what is your view on this question?
um I think it's not being it's learning to know that there is nothing shameful about showing emotions. Like as I said, from being in Africa, you are told, hey, don't cry. If you fall, hey, stand up, be strong. A man doesn't cry, those kind of things. However, I would say my support system around me, my sisters, the moment I begin to engage with my sisters, if I'm going through something and I'm like, I shouldn't be crying, and they're like, no, don't be ashamed. I mean, if it doesn't mean that you are less of a man if you are crying. So having learning and being in those kind of spaces, I think will help go a long way to understand that even if you do show emotion, it doesn't mean that you are less of a man.
Thank you. Ambassador Clint, what do you think?
Um, how does a man transition from the macho to emotional? I think over time had an I think we have the wrong conception of what macho is. I think when we hear the word macho, we think is a man that it's all powerful, emotionless. A man that do things in such a perfect kind of way, in a lack of a better term. But being macho can be emotional as well, because being macho, you're not doing it for yourself, but you're doing it for those around you. So being macho in the family, for example, is being emotionally engaged, emotionally available, not only for yourself but for those around you. So the transition, like I mentioned before, like Ambassador Ampo said, is that it is the support system that we have. And a man cannot recognize where he's going wrong if we do not bring what he's doing wrong to light. So by bringing it to light in the most positive kind of way and working with him can help with that transition for him to be more emotional. Because I feel that a man should be the most emotional or vulnerable in the comfort or confinement of his home. That is where he can be his true self. And when we feel comfortable enough to do that in our home, then it's easy for us to transition that same feeling, that same emotions outside of the home. So I think by working in the home, understanding it, either regardless what type of relationship it is, working together and helping him feel that confidence that, hey, it's okay to be emotional. And emotional does not mean weak. Emotional is understanding yourself and understanding what you need to do for the other person as well. So just by doing those simple steps, I believe that we can help with that transition.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Benjamin, what do you think?
I think my board colleagues summed it up nicely there, and I do agree with their perspective. Uh, for me, you need to understand what is machismo, what is emotion, what are those things? I think, as Ambassador said, the term has been coined in such a negative way for so long that we now have to redefine what it means. And once we get to that place, then I think a transition, because we can't transition into what we don't know. We can't transition into the unknown. You need to identify it, you need to define it before we could figure out what are the next steps.
Thank you for your contributions. We're moving on to the next question. So, how do you think past relationship, romantic or otherwise, affect your future or current relationships? And in what ways do you think negative experiences in relationship causes one to display or manifest similar traits? Mr. Benjamin?
Wow, that's that's a nice big one, because I think as a clinical therapist, most times when people come before me as couples, married or unmarried, that carries about 60 to 80% of the challenges that they come with. What we call the baggage, right? You know, you tote it and you drag it into your current relationship. Most times we don't take time to really understand what are our baggages. Sometimes we in a bad relationships, and then we move from a bad relationship into other relationship with it without first understanding what was bad, what needs to change, what you are going to take from the past relationship, and what you're going to get rid of. And until we start to do that, we will see the transitioning. So I always say to people, the other major factor is the red light, the green light, and the amber light. And I like to break it down into those three perspectives. What are the red lights of relationship that you are going to take? What are the amber lights? So those red lights are your must. There is no negotiation there. Then you're going to have the amber lights. Come with a strong argument and we can decide which way it's going to go. And then the green light are those things that are neither here or there. I think if we start to compartmentalize how we move in relationships like that, then we realize it becomes easier for people to determine. But to do that, Ambassador, we need to have a conversation. You need to understand. I think for too long, people come into relationship with secrets. And only when something gets out of hand, you realize that this is something that you have been toting from the last relationship. So I think in short, if we are to get out of that whole transition that will affect the other relationships, you need to recognize those red lights, those amber lights, those green lights. You need to figure out how you are coming into the relationship, what you are bringing into the relationship. And let me end by saying this one. Your partner must be an invested party in that conversation, because you will know whether or not it's something that you are willing to accept, something you can accept. You see, and there's a difference between the two, because I am willing to accept it, but there's something in me that just can't accept it. Then you need to keep moving. But too often, we don't have those kind of conversation. And then after long, we end up in these problems. You see? Thank you.
Thank you. Ambassador Clint, what would you like to add to this question?
All right. How does past relationship affect our current or future relationship? So to add to what Mr. Benjamin said, personally, I believe that, or personally, individuals who have been hurt, cheated on, lie, etc., in past relationship will find it difficult to trust someone in the future. Our past experiences influence our behavior because it affects our perspective or our perception of ourselves and others. There's a concept known as self-defeating thoughts. which are mistakes or faulty beliefs that you hold about yourself and the world around you. This can impact your self-esteem, the feelings you carry about your personal abilities and the relationship with others. So, for example, if a past negative relationship or experience that you had in a relationship happen a certain way, then any similar experiences can trigger a negative or fear response within you. And some of those responses can be in the form of withdrawal from the other person, either emotionally or physically, increased accusations, stonewalling, arguments, fights, deflecting blames. So past relationship, as Mr. Benjamin said, you can bring these baggages with you into the current relationship, which can make it in most cases stagnant. So instead of you guys growing, instead of you going forward, you're just moving backwards all the time.
Thank you. Ambassador Ampo?
Yeah, as my colleagues have said, most of the people that I've talked to or I've engaged with in terms of like trying to assess them, like maybe with their relationship or what they are going through, it is 90% of them, what affects their present moment is actually what happened in the past. It's their previous heads. So one of the things I think people don't give themselves enough time to recover and to learn from the mistakes. As Mr. Benjamin said, once you come into a relationship or when you're in a relationship and it happens that unfortunately you guys decide to go separate ways, one needs to be able to identify, the reds and then the greens. You need to be able to say, okay, I'm not going to take this moving forward, but with the understanding of like that whenever we meet people who are different, and you need to understand the reasons of why the person went as far as to doing whatever they did. So the moment we put in, I'd say more to understanding why the person went as far or why they did what they did, then I think that will kind of give you a different perspective moving forward into another relationship. So if in the new relationship, someone does something, but now it's for a different reason, I think that will kind of give you a different perspective as well in that relationship moving forward. So I think, yeah, for us moving forward, people need to give them enough time, like give themselves enough time to look back and reflect on what went wrong in the previous relationship, and then make sure that you are healed. I mean, we can't really say you are fully healed after maybe 5 months or 6 months. It depends. It all takes time, and it depends on you as a person, how well you digest, what you went through, and then moving forward, now you can, kind of learn from whatever happened in the past.
Thank you. So I guess we have to identify, define, and reflect on our past relationships. I'm passing back to Dale.
Thank you, everybody. I really do believe, though, however, that as we talk, as Mr. Benjamin was saying, that you need to have the open communication, both parties, and willing to have the conversation as well. In terms of working on the relationship as a partner or as two persons, I always believe also that you need to work on yourself as an individual before. And before you get into any relationship at all. But to you guys, how or what are some ways that we could work on ourselves before we try to be in a relationship or try to foster healthy relationships? What are some ways we could work on ourselves? And I'd asked Ambassador Clint first.
All right, thank you. First, we need to develop a better understanding and appreciation for ourselves. Too many times, I believe that we try to seek validation and love from others when we have not yet validated or love ourselves. One of the ways that I have learned that you can better understand and appreciate yourself is This can be done, like I said, mentioned earlier, this can be done by taking the love languages and color code tests, which are both free online. And once completed, like I did mention, it helps you to learn about yourself from a different lens or perspective. It highlights what motivates or drive you, what brings happiness and pain, and you also learn why others do and do not do certain things. Second, I think that we need to forgive ourselves. Many times we carry, like what was mentioned before, we carry unnecessary loads, baggages, or burdens from past relationship into the future. We blame ourselves for what went wrong. We internalize what we could have done better, and most times put ourselves back in same situations because somehow we felt that if I change, then hopefully the other person might as well. Or we are so, or sometimes we so badly want to be in that relationship that we neglect what is best for us. So I believe that when we forgive ourselves, it gives us the power to move out of the past and into the future. We have more control over our lives. We release ourselves of unnecessary blame and burden, and we start the necessary healing and growth process. Lastly, I believe that you should allow yourself to grieve. Many times after a breakup or a divorce or whatever it might be, we rush into someone else's arm because we feel somehow it might fill a void or that hole within us. In most cases it does, and in others it does not. Understanding appreciation and appreciating that every person that enters our life is supported or is supposed to be there for a reason, like Medea said, whether to teach us a lesson or to learn to grow in some way, which helps us to start the grieving process, which give us, like I said, give us the permission to take control, to be vulnerable, and to be present in the moment. So I believe if we incorporate these simple steps, and sometimes not always simple, we can place ourselves on the right path towards a healthy relationship.
Thank you, Ambassador. Ambassador Empo.
I think, we need to be totally honest with ourselves. If you know that you are not ready to be in a relationship, don't be in a relationship, and also be so brutal in a sense if you are doing some self-reflection, because I've heard someone say, oh, I'm cheating, or I cheated because my partner was not giving me enough time and whatnot. That's no reason to cheat. I mean, if the person is not giving you enough time and you're not happy, then just leave. We should learn to take accountability. The moment we learn to take accountability, then that will help us, to be better people or to understand ourselves better the moment you're in a relationship, So I would say for us is to totally be honest with ourselves. If you are not ready, you are not ready. Don't be in a relationship to impress your friends or people around you. Do it for yourself. When you are ready, be in one. If not, then don't be in one. And also, as I said, if ever you're not happy with the person that you are with, make sure that you exit the ship, or else, you're going to bring a whole lot of things that are unnecessary into the new relationship.
I like that. Thank you so much, Ambassador. And Mr. Benjamin.
My colleagues have done put it really nicely, and I really do appreciate that. Let me add to that discourse. I think too often we don't take time to develop our emotional self. As a matter of fact, I believe we give away our emotion as if it's bread on a Sunday dinner, you see. And we come into a relationship, and because we are not strong as individuals, because we are not strong as in our own self, in our own worth, in our own dignity, in our own right, we come into a relationship and we just give away our emotion, we give away our who we are. And so what you find happening is people becoming unhealthily attached because your emotion is now tied to someone else. So they tell you when to be happy. They tell you when to be sad. They tell you when to be excited. And if they're unhappy, then you should be unhappy as well. And if they are sad, then you should be sad. In order to, like I'm telling you, you sad, okay, I'm going to support you, but I'm not going to be sad with you. I'm going to be here drinking a glass of wine happy while you sad. I will support you, but we're not going to be sad together. That's not going to happen. And the way that we can deal with that, is by developing who we are as an individual. We're going to develop who I am, what I come to the relationship with. And when that happens, you will recognize that people are stronger in relationship and they are not easily moved. And let me not just add here, they don't stay beyond the time that they should be stayed in a relationship.
I agree. Thank you so much, Mr. Benjamin and ambassadors. And on to the next question. So the golden rule in most relationships has often been conceived to be treat your partner as you want to be treated, right? So new studies have shown that instead you should treat your partner like they want to be treated. So I want to ask you guys, you three, if you believe that or if you agree with that statement, and what is the difference between treating your partner as you want to be treated or treat your partner as they want to be treated? And I'll go first with Mr. Benjamin.
Oh, I didn't hear that. Wow, that's a nice one. I think that's a tricky one too, right? But let me tell you this. We treat people with dignity and worth. And I always like to use my social work principles. As a lecturer, I teach you the 7 principles of social work by Felix Bistex. And one of those principles are dignity and worth of a person. I think if we treat people with dignity and worth, then that is all that matters. As a matter of fact, I have seen where people don't know how they want to be treated. And it goes back to my previous comment of they not understanding self. And so you come into a relationship and you do crazy things for people. And somewhere in your mind, you expect them to do crazy. I am not crossing no sea. I will drown. I can't swim good. So you cross the sea and you want me to cross the sea for you. No, I'm not crossing the sea. I will drown. I will call the Coast Guard and I will say there's a person in distress out there. You have to understand what exactly you want from somebody and what you want for yourself. Too often we are not realistic in terms of how we want, what we want, when we want it. We assume based on a lot of Western construct in terms of what a relationship should look like. And then we hold our partners accountable, even without expressing those needs that they should develop. And when those partners fail to give you what you in your mind think, then you vex and then you start to respond as if I'm supposed to know that you want me to look like a Kardashian. But in reality, I'm wrong. I've been wrong and I will, I'm wrong. So I can't do that. So for me, we need to understand self, we need to understand our partners, and we need to do that in a sense of reality. And I think when we become, from a realistic perspective, we will understand that we will not hold one another to those presumptions, and what I call false ideologies, yeah?
Thank you so much, Mr. Benjamin. Ambassador Temple.
I like what Ambassador Benjamin said at the end, that we need to throw away these ideologies, these golden rules and stuff like that, the social media perfect love couple and whatever. We need to throw those things out through the window, because number one, once you're in a relationship, you're dealing with a different person, so your expectations might not be their expectations, and how you deal with things might not be how they deal with things. So these golden rules that, hey, this is working for me, this has worked for the past 100 years and whatnot, I think those I think those things should be, thrown out. But teach people to, as my colleague said, teach a person to understand themselves first. The moment you understand yourself, you understand what you want, and you are realistic about things. You can't expect someone to swim across an ocean whereas the person cannot swim. Just because you swim and now you're expecting them to do the same thing, you can't do that. So I think the moment we calm down, and be realistic about things, about what one wants, and then you communicate. Communicate with your partner, and then the moment you communicate with your partner, then I think a lot of things will be a lot easier moving forward.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. One of our audience members said, I think the question can be linked to what Ambassador Kalinda said about learning love languages and understanding what the other person wants as compared to what you alone want. And another one said, stop taking advice relationship from TV and memes and Steve Harvey. Okay. Well, as Mr. Benjamin said, don't expect the unexpected, to be realistic. Because for me, I can't swim either, and I would not be crossing the ocean for anyone in that way. Ambassador Clint.
Yeah, thanks. When I hear the concept or the phrase, treat your partner as you want to be treated, it brings me back to something what is known as the social exchange theory, which talks about we do things because we expect a reward or expect a benefit in return. And that can cause a lot of conflict in a relationship because you want to do, or I'm going to do this for you because I expect you to return the same gesture, the same favor for me. So yes, I do believe that we should get away from that notion, and I do believe that we should treat our partners like they want to be treated. Early in my marriage, I had a conversation with my wife, and we realized that she was doing things or some stuff for me because she expected me to return the same gestures for her. And most times, and I'm sorry, but most times we don't understand or we don't catch the gestures that our wives or our partners does for us. And because of that, it had caused her to doubt if she was doing something wrong, if I did not appreciate her effort, etc. But and like you read in the comment, when my wife and I took the love language test, we were able to identify the roots of our conflicts. We were able to increase our connection. We understand that I love differently than how she loves. I interpret things differently than she does. And because of that, we were able to best meet both of our emotional needs. Due to this, we started to treat each other the way they wanted to be treated. We were able to compromise more. We understood that, yes, we're going to have differences, but most times we need to find a common or middle ground. And that's what helps us to meet or to fulfill the purpose of a healthy relationship, in the lack of a better term.
Thank you. One of our audience members said it's important to also date someone before and get to know them before just jumping into a relationship and trying to force something to work. Some people get compatibility, and infatuation mixed up, and then issues come up. Yes. So back to you, Rachel.
Okay, thank you. One of our last questions, do you think having a spiritual background helps foster a healthy relationship? Ambassador Ampo first.
Yes, I think having a spiritual relationship with God does help a lot because number one, I think it teaches you of principles that you wouldn't learn on the streets. There are principles that you need to have, and you ought to question or maybe come to an understanding about yourself and your reverence to God. So the moment you understand that you are of service and you are of reverence to God, I think that will put you in a better position, moving forward on how you need to treat your partner and how you need to handle issues with your partner, because there are things that you wouldn't like do, like maybe shouting at God and fighting and throwing tantrums and stuff like that, just because you respect and you have reverence for him. So I think being able to know that and understand that space, then the moment you're also in a relationship, it's something that you can't take away from you. The moment it's a principle that you understand, then the moment you move into your relationship, it's something that you can carry with you, and it will help your relationship to be much better.
Thank you. Ambassador Clint?
All right, thanks. I want to be realistic for a moment. Proclaiming to be spiritual and doing or doing things that are spiritual are two different things. Many people draw near to God with their words, but their hearts are far from him. So having a spiritual relationship is more than words, but actions, thoughts, deeds behind those words. With that in mind, yes, I do believe that having a healthy spiritual relationship helps foster a healthy relationship. The reason is that regardless of your spiritual belief, when you have a healthy spiritual relationship, you exemplify certain traits and characteristics, such as tolerance, honesty, kindness, leniency, humility, compassion, respect, love, integrity, and the list goes on. These traits and characteristics helps us to build meaningful and kind relationship. We are more prone to be grateful and thankful for having the other person in our life and what they do for us. We see them as imperfect beings like ourselves that will make mistakes, but together we can overcome those mistakes and be better. We learn to appreciate our differences as well as our commonalities. We genuinely and unselfishly serve each other. So back to the thing, we serve not expecting something in return. And by having a spiritual foundation, we always strive to be the best version of ourselves and also for our partners.
Thank you. Mr. Benjamin, what would you like to say on this question?
I too would like to be realistic in this. I think this is a topic by itself, in that I think we take the Bible or the understanding of what religion or spirituality should be or shouldn't be in relation to marriage, love, sex, and all of these things. And again, we hold an ideal to what people should ascribe to. And then people go out into the real world, into the realistic world, and then hold one another to those ideals. Again, without understanding whether or not there is a foundation for those ideals, whether or not those ideals are real or perceived, like the ambassador said. Because to be spiritual is one thing, to say I am spiritual or religious, but your action is very much different. And so I think what is going to be important, again, going back to the power of communication, is what we believe as an individual and what we hold for one another in terms of the belief, and whether or not we are respecting of each other's belief, even the belief to be different in our understanding of what we believe.
Thank you. Well done is better than well said. I agree. So it's important to have a relationship with God, and a genuine relationship, not just a relationship that we say, oh, I have a relationship, because he's actually our foundation, like the family. He's our family, and it's important to be real with him. I would like to take this opportunity to pass back to Dale.
Thank you, ambassadors. And I agree with all of our panelists on this discussion. Finally, I was on some of your Instagram and so on, because I normally would do that to do some research. And I've noticed, Mr. Benjamin, on yours, one, I think it's like some things you do it at mornings. It's like a ritual, something that you talk to us on mornings. One of it was about the glass. I think just having a glass. And I want you to talk to, and it was very inspirational. Trust me, I looked at it, I think twice to get the concept and to understand. And I really enjoyed that. So tell me in closing, what would you want men to know about fostering healthy relationships?
I think what is important for men to understand is self. I think for too long, we have not had the pleasure of self. And if we want to be there as the head of our house, if we want to be the rock as we should be, then we need to understand self, not our role as society has prescribed for us, but understand ourself as an individual first. Understand what you want to bring to the table, what you want to bring to this house, and then step forward. I think we need to take that moment and develop that first before we get involved, before we begin to build. Because we all know when we start to build on sand and the wave comes, what happens? So build a solid foundation in the first instance so that you could continue to grow and build accordingly. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And thank you for all the inspiration that you share via your social media as well. I appreciate that. Ambassador Empo Macafone, as an athlete and a business owner, what do you want to tell young men or men in general about fostering healthy relationships?
I think what I honestly want men to take out of all this is that you always have a choice. You know, it's very important for you to know that, or when you enter or when you start a relationship with someone, don't be forced into one, don't be pressurized into one. You know, do it willingly. You know, do it willingly, and know that it's at your discretion, at your choice. Be the person who says, I want this relationship, not like people around you pressurizing you to say, oh, you guys look together and so forth. No, take that and throw it out. But know that, number one, be there because it's your choice, you know. And also just understand that once you're in a relationship, it will bring change, you know, but let it be good change. Let it be change that will make you a better person, you know, not change now that you start doing things that are out of character. You know, be in character and then learn to grow within that relationship, and also just communicate better once you have that person that you'll be with. And then I think moving forward, then everything will work out well.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. And finally, Ambassador Clint Calendar, I watched your YouTube channel today, and I saw your speech. So it was like almost like the TED Talk Sunday, and I talk about fathers stepping up, or men in general to step up, so that we could secure a proper future for the people that we love. What do you want to tell men today about fostering healthy relationships?
Well, thanks. I will tell men that, you know, start to learn and practice active listening. You know, a lot of times we listen to reply and not listen to understand. I will say, learn and appreciate yourself. Learn to have a self-love. You know, it might seem selfish at first, but after a while you realize that before you can truly take care of others, you have to first take care of yourself. Lastly, I would like men to know that take the time to know your partner. There's a saying in Guyana, come see me and come live with me is two different things. You know, a lot of times persons show us this nice face, and after the familiarity and formalities are gone, you start to see the true self of that person. So I would say take the time to get to know person. So active listening, learn to love yourself for who you are, and take the time to know that other person before rushing into a relationship.
Thank you so much, Ambassador.
Well, we have heard it from these three courageous men speaking on an issue that has piqued the interest of many men and women alike. We thank you for engaging in today's intriguing discussion about fostering healthy relationships and for ensuring that men could feel comfortable speaking about their perceptions of healthy relationships. Ambassador Macafoni, Ambassador Callender, and Mr. Benjamin, we thank you for your work and for engaging in this progressive dialogue. I believe our viewing audience was empowered and more informed on the challenges and stigmas attached to fostering healthy relationships and the impact they can have on our men and our community alike. We thank you for your contributions to breaking the stigma and cultivating a culture of education, awareness, and change on this important issue. Dale?
Thank you, Ambassador. To our guest on today's show, I say thank you again for your commitment to defending the present while focusing on our future. It was indeed an informative and progressive conversation.
Okay. Once again, we wish to acknowledge our sponsors, Bright Hill Incorporated, Treats by PYT, Healthy Kinder International LLC, Global Food Warrior, Youth Amplified Program, Business Aesthetics, Caribbean Craze, Women of Substance, and Rapture Streetwear. We thank you for your continued support and contributions. Dale?
We also extend a warm thank you to the management and staff at Future Focus Empowerment Institute International for all their hard work and dedication towards the success of this show. To our listening and viewing audience on all of our social media platforms, we say thank you for tuning in. This brings us to the end of today's show. Thank you for joining us. And be sure to register and tune in next week's episode of Future Focus Fridays as we engage in more thought-provoking conversations and as we continue our special segment in July with youths. For questions and for those who have an interest in being a sponsor or advertising on our show, you can email us at info@futurefocus.org, or you could call us. You could call us at 347-299-6652 for more information. Note that Future Focus Empowerment Institute International is a registered 501c3 tax-exempt NGO, and all monetary donations are tax deductible. Once again, thank you guys for joining us, and see you next week. Goodbye.